Have you ever caught yourself giving the perfectly reasonable sounding excuse for skipping the exact thing that you actually needed to do? None of us ever do that, right? Well, I'm going back. I started a new year, and this wasn't the current year, but a few years back. I started in a new year with this big vision. I was going to combine two workout programs, and I was genuinely excited to do both. Both would have been new to me. What I did not plan for was how much of just those moves that were in there were actually super challenging to me. I had been doing like extreme type of workouts, so I figured two workouts that were kind of intermediate, beginner to intermediate sort of things. At least I was putting it in the beginner category. Boy, I was quickly humbled. But it was challenging me. Certain routines just needed way more coordination than I expected. And here I was. Now I was doing workouts off of DVDs. So this goes into the Wayback Machine a little bit. But I found myself starting to dread every single time there was these workouts coming up on the calendar. So today I want to talk to you and just walk you through the pattern of what it finally took to catch it, to finally get it before we get into all this stuff. I do want to take a little bit of a detour here. It has to do with podcasting because maybe you've never started your own podcast before because you're not sure what yours would even be about, or would even anybody listen? Or maybe you did start a podcast and you just watched it fizzle out maybe after a few episodes. Maybe it was around episode 4 or 5. Either way, this part is for you. I'm doing something that's really, really exciting. The Power Blast podcast has been going on since 2007, and I still remember exactly how I felt sitting there, not sure would I even have enough topics to talk about. Now we're over like 2,300 episodes, but I didn't know what the show would actually be about. And most of the time, it wasn't about the tech; it was about the message. I hadn't found the message. I was still dialing that in. So what I've created here is something called a 5-day podcast sprint. I'm doing it live, not an actual sprint, but it's helping you go through 5 days. It's August 17th through the 21st, where you start the week with your stories and you end it with having a show ready to create. I've got all the details on it. I won't go on into the details here on the podcast, but you can text the word sprint, SPRINT. You can text the word sprint over at 208-400-5095. Once again, if you're trying to memorize this, that's 208-400-5095. Or if you're really good at memorizing, go to worldclasspodcaster.com/sprint for all the details there. Super excited to have this. All right, so today's topic is what we're going to get into. Here's what started happening when I started getting going. My New Year's resolution, I was going to kick in, and I'm going to conquer 2 programs, right? I would get to days where there were moves that I just didn't like in the workout. I would know the moves are coming up, and I would virtually talk myself out of doing them, and it wasn't skipping them outright. I was just like, this is just so obvious to ignore. I'm avoiding this. Or I found myself deciding it was going to be, today's going to be a partial workout. I could convince myself that, because I knew like the last half of it was going to be really intense or something like that. I'm like, yeah, I'll just do a partial workout. And we can convince ourselves, we can tell ourselves a really good story of how that's just and how that's better showing up is better than nothing, right? But I found myself just showing up for the sections of the workout that were just comfortable and skipping the rest. I'm like, what have I been doing? What's the deal here? Both sounded like something a person who takes the training seriously, but not really seriously. What's the deal here? So my brain is having this constant battle these first few months of this new year, and the brain was running this script underneath. Skip this part. This is new. You're not going to like it. You can stop. Kind of like what I've told you with my yoga story before, where I just skipped it because like, oh no, it's too hokey, it's too weird, it's too corny, too uncomfortable. And so this sounded like reasonable advice to myself. And I knew the payoff over time depended on pushing through those exact moves, getting better at them. But here I was avoiding them. So most days, here's what I did, because it kept coming up. I was like, yeah, maybe I can skip that this week. Maybe next week I'll do better. I started making myself press on anyway. And it wasn't because, oh, you're overworking yourself, you're going to get yourself injured. It was not that. It was just I didn't want to do the work. I didn't want to do the moves. I felt a little bit off because I was a little bit out of my comfort zone. After every workout that I pushed through, instead of taking the easy way out, I would just talk back to my voice and just say, yeah, I told you so. I could do that. It really sounded ridiculous having these little conversations with myself. Have you ever called yourself out on the ridiculous conversations? But here I was. This back and forth talk became a pattern of its own. My brain making the case to quit, me answering it after the fact saying, hey, I proved you wrong. And so this can happen with almost anything worth doing. I'm not even just talking about just exercise here. The excuse rarely shows up sounding lazy or obvious. It usually sounds smart, intelligent, reasonable. We just don't get radically honest with ourselves and call it an excuse. We're just like, yeah, that makes sense. I can buy into that. The version of you trying to talk yourself out of the hard part is patient. It will never use the same script or the same wording over and over until this power of awareness, until you've noticed the pattern that you start talking back to it and saying, no, who says? I'm going for this. So I'm going to recommend to you to watch for the excuse that sounds reasonable. And it's so reasonable that you want to question it. That's usually the one worth questioning the most. You've got this, my friend. I'd love to hear your top takeaway from today. Drop those down in the comments. I promise I will reply. I hope you join us for the podcast sprint. That will be so cool. If podcasting is on your radar, you absolutely rock, my friend. And as always, remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week. That's another Power Blast podcast in the books. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, when you are ready to recharge your battery, make sure you go to talktoperry.com. That's talktoperry.com. That's Perry. And I want to listen. I want to hear, what's going on. I want to help you in that 15-minute call to recharge your battery and reclaim your power so that you're off and running and creating massive momentum toward your dream. Also, every day I am delivering more motivation, support, tips, and strategies inside my free community with amazing people like yourself. And we are conquering the mindset and the fitness. I do 52 weeks of free training in there. Plus, I coach and I mentor people, as well as give you access to tons of resources and guides. It's called my Upside Down Fitness Community because we work on a lot of mindset stuff, the inside stuff. And we're a fun group of people striving to make healthier habits in this awesome chapter of life. So make sure you get in there. I promise you'll absolutely love it. Just head over to upsidedownfit.com and you can get into the group. And hey, you would be an awesome friend if you get over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave an honest rating and review for the Power Blast podcast. It helps awesome people like you find the show even faster, and that's who I'm looking for, awesome people like you. That's all I have for this week, my friend, and just to let you know, you absolutely rock. That's all I have for this week. I'll see you on the next Power Blast podcast, and always remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week.